Shabbat Shalom, and for those of you that sent whatever it was, birthday wishes, greetings, prayers, whatever we do these days, I don't know. Thank you so much. Yes, I have officially entered into the Medicare eligible range now. So, but as my daughter said, I refuse to grow up. So, for those of you that share with me that Medicare eligible. That's only in physical sense, and mentally, no, I'm not going there. But yeah, celebrated a birthday yesterday, which was, of course, coming up on Passover. And that's why I'm doing something a little different this week. With Passover this week, I had to change recordings to Tuesday. So yesterday I decided that, I just thought I'm not going to do a recording today. Not just because it's my birthday and I want to take the day off, but because it was coming up on Passover, and it was then evident last night. Why? Because I have something I think very special to share with you today, coming up into this Passover season. A couple things regarding Passover. Remember that Passover is not just a moment in time, but Passover is a season. And it is said that we have not truly entered into Passover and observed Passover until we have observed Shavuot. And those those are two of the three biblical festivals that were, Passover, Shavuot, Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles. That's the three big ones. But so this is all about our redemption. And then out of that redemption, we really are not truly redeemed until we come to the place of the message of Shavuot, Pentecost, and we receive their instructions into our lives that are going to give us a new way of life and therefore keep us from going back into bondage. It's been exciting to watch on Facebook the last few days, and of course this morning also, as the posts have come out from people all over the country, around the world, that are celebrating Passover. I remember the days in which it was like, one or two people here and there, and to just see all the Passover services that are going on is amazing. I'll get to that in just a moment. Before I do, though, I will be, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, I'll be in Wilkesboro, North Carolina this Shabbat, working with Exodus Road Band, my brother Rico Cortez. I can't remember his name. He has been working with the Red Heifers in Israel. Looking forward to meeting him and spending some time. And my son Daniel is going to be up there just for I believe, the afternoon, evening on Shabbat. And so if you're anywhere around Wilkesboro, North Carolina, please come and see us. Rico, I will be speaking to the adults one time. I'm going to be doing more of the young adult youth sessions because I'm not old enough actually to be in the adult section. I'm still over in my mind, guys. At Thanksgiving, I'm still sitting at the children's table, okay? And I'm very happy at the children's table because that's where all the fun is. So if you're anywhere around there, if you need information on that, please send me an email. I'll be glad to send that to you. The Passovers, seeing the pictures was wonderful. I figured out last night, I don't know how a miracle happened at our Passover last night in that there wasn't a single picture taken. I don't know how we possibly got through the whole evening, but nobody took out a phone, nobody took out a camera, and nobody took a picture that I know of, and I'm okay with that. But there was pictures all over Facebook of some that were large, some that were small, some that were elaborate, some that were simple. Anywhere between all of that, but just to see the number of people. I know folks that have had churches reach out to them in the last few months that knew that they observed Passover, and churches that have been saying, we're kind of rethinking some things of, how do you get 3 days and 3 nights between Friday and Sunday? Was he really resurrected on Sunday? Is there some issues here? And so there's a lot of people that are waking up to this to this amazing revelation. In fact, I think it's wonderful this year in that the days of the week actually correspond to the same time that it was in 2,000 years ago at the time of Yeshua. And this would correspond, I guess, maybe to the same as it was in the days of Egypt. I don't know, but last Shabbat was the 10th of Nisan. I told our congregation it was on that day that they brought the lamb into the house to be examined. As it was in the days of Yeshua, it was on Shabbat. Interesting enough, Messiah being our Shabbat, our rest in redemption, he was brought into Jerusalem, and it was Shabbat that he began to reveal himself. It was in those days that he was questioned. It would have been on Wednesday night that he was placed upon an execution stake. And these days that we're into right now, between now and the end of Shabbat, he was not. The scripture never says that he was raised on Sunday morning. It says the women went to the tomb on Sunday morning. Why? Because it was Shabbat for one thing, and you wouldn't have traveled. And you wouldn't have traveled at night. They would not have been able to travel to the tomb until after Shabbat was over and it's kind of dark out. And so they would have waited till the next morning. So this year, everything lines up on our Gregorian calendar, the best of our knowledge, the same as it was in the days of Yeshua. And I wonder if maybe it was the same in the days of Egypt. I don't know. A new thought for me this year is funny. I've been celebrating Passover since 1997. I'll talk about that in a few minutes. And this is just this video this week is just me kind of sharing some personal things, and I hope it speaks to you. But I wondered this year. I've taught for a number of years that the first Passover was in the garden, and so when the Almighty slayed the animal, that was the day that would later be referred to as Passover. So I wonder if he came to them on the 10th of Nisan in the garden and began to question them and to talk to them about, we get this idea that things just happen, like one after another, that this moment, and now the story is done. But did this happen over time? Did he come to them on the 10th of Nisan, begin to explain to them what they had done? Was the lamb slain, or the animal slain on the evening of the 14th? Did he take those skins and it take 50 days during what we would see as the count of the Omer until the days of Shavuot? And we see in Bereshit, Genesis chapter 3, when he brought the skins, he brought life into the skins and gave it to them. Is this all the biblical pattern that happens over and over and over again? As Hulis Allwine says, it's not that prophecy happens. We shouldn't be saying, is prophecy happening, but how many times has this now been fulfilled? How many times are we on the time in which we're seeing it fulfilled again and again and again, until there will be one day a final fulfillment of these prophecies? It's that cycle that we go through. And so to see this happen and other new people coming into this has been amazing. I was remembering back to, it was 1997. I was pastoring this Southern Baptist Charismatic Pentecostal with very slightly Messianic leanings. I had not even been to Israel yet. I don't know if I knew what the word Torah meant. I sure couldn't have explained it to anybody. I was probably still teaching a little replacement theology in those days, and was invited to go to a Passover Seder in Tallahassee, Florida. So myself, Kathy, a number of us from the church there, we went to Tallahassee, and it was quite an event. You gotta understand that where I was pastoring in Tallahassee, in Spring Creek, It's a long ways from the city, and it's a long ways from city folks. And so we walked into this banquet room, and you talk about elegant. It was elegant to the max. Uh, I'm totally uncomfortable in places like that. It was one of those that there's probably 200 or 300 people there, and they've got these round tables, which something about that. They have a table that seats 6, and you've got to put 8 to 10 at the table. And so it's like this claustrophobic thing that I don't do real well. And then there's 5 or 6 forks at the plate setting. I'm a very simple person. I only need 1 fork. It doesn't matter if it's salad, appetizer, the green beans, or dessert. I only use 1 kind of fork. It just fits real well. And I'm having to look around and go, okay, which fork am I supposed to use for this? And it's uncomfortable. It's one of these very long seders that took hours and hours, and I'm looking around like, okay, I know there's something here, but I think that there's something that I'm kind of missing. But that did pique an interest to look at this a little bit more, and I remember going to another Seder the next year, and then eventually would begin to lead the Seders. And over the last however many years it's been, from 97 till now, I've probably attended over 20 Seders, well over 20 Seders. I've led most of them. And as I look back at the Seders that we've done, I was in Belgium in 2005, led a Seder. It was that we knew of. It was the first time that there had been a group of people that were just new to. In those days, Hebrew roots, Messianic, Torah was very new to the area of Antwerpen. There was congregations springing up, but there were few and far between. And so I was able to lead. It was over 100 people that came together in Antwerpen that night, and I led what we think was the first community Passover that was based on the person of Messiah. We did a Passover in Oklahoma that I dressed up as Moses. That was a blast. Did one down in Clayton, Georgia. That did the same thing. That's always fun. We've done small Passovers. One year it was just Kathy and I. We've done large Passovers, each one of them having great meaning. But this year's Passover was, let me tell you, just totally different. I think I shared this a few weeks ago, that as we began to talk about Passover for Life Assembly, we actually had 3 different Passovers last night. But our son Daniel and his wife Catesby they have a new house, new mobile home, and so they wanted to have Passover at their house. And we were outnumbered by children last night, as it is normal with Life Assembly that we're outnumbered, which is a wonderful thing. We had 5 adults. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 adults. Yeah, 6 adults and 7 children that were there, if my memory serves me right. And we had a beautiful Passover together. But what I wasn't expecting is that along the way of planning, that Daniel would come to me and say, by the way, it's at my house and I'm leading it. And at first I went, okay, that's fine. And then I began to figure out, wait a minute, that means I'm not. If he's leading it, that means I'm not leading it. And it was really the next morning when I was going through my morning routine that I heard these. It's one thing when you listen to my teachings and tell me something, and you send me a text, Dorothy, thank you, Dorothy and Mike. You send me emails, various people that do, or write a short letter. Just let me know what's something that I said that was meaningful to you. I appreciate that. But it's quite another thing when I have to listen to my own teachings. And something I've been teaching for a number of years now is a rising generation. And so I was going through, as I said, my morning routine, and all of a sudden I heard these words. As I was almost getting offended that like Daniel hadn't asked me, he just made a statement. He came back later and talked to me about that. But I heard these words, rising generation, that means you got to get out of the way. Oh, yeah, that stung. It stung, but in the end, I'm all for it. Watching these young people, as I'm just honored to be a part of their growth, watching them enter into leadership positions, watching them as I do with Life on Purpose every week with Daniel, Ryan, and David, watching them enter into this beautiful place of their own growth is beyond words. So Daniel and I talked about our Passover a little bit, and he wanted to honor some of the traditions that I've put in place through the years, but wanted to do something that was personal, was his, and we talked about that. Of course, we had lamb last night, which I don't really like lamb very much, but Kathy makes a beautiful lamb for Passover, so we had lamb. I understand I know the thoughts that Judah has, that the Jewish people have regarding not having lamb. Many do not have lamb because there's no temple. My thought is that there was no temple in Egypt either. So, I look at it and we have lamb at our Passover table. We had the bitter herbs. We had a choice for the children of the horseradish or some parsley. And interesting enough, our granddaughter, she loved the horseradish. It was hot too, but we had the horseradish. We had matzah, of course, and some wonderful matzah ball soup. We had our shoes, at least everybody had shoes at least either on or close to their feet. We had our staffs either in our hand or close within grabbing distance. We ate it in haste. Why? Because it was really good. Mary, you did a wonderful job on the matzo ball soup, and Sarah and everybody came together and just had a beautiful meal that we ate very fast because it was so good. But the ending that we came to, me and Daniel came to, was this: that Passover is about telling the story. And so, what is the story? Is the story the Passover from the Exodus of Egypt? Yes. But is that all of the story? Are we truly telling the story if we only tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt? Or if we tell the story of the Exodus from Egypt, but do not tell what I would refer to as the rest of the story, is it like opening one chapter of a book, reading that chapter, and saying that we've read the whole book? So with that, Daniel wrote on his notes, it says the story. So I'd like to share with you, I told Daniel last night that the first time that I do this, I'm going to give him credit. So this time I'm giving credit. The next time I read it, it's going to be a relative told me, and the third time it's mine. So I'd like to share with you today what Daniel has written out regarding the story of Passover. It started with a word. He spoke and everything came into being. Pure words, pure sound, directed from the Ancient of Days, the Most Holy One. In 7 days he created perfection. Not a blemish to be found, not a single thing could have been better than it was. Creator and creation dwelled together in harmony. Then an evil word, as impure as the Creator's word was pure, entered into that perfection. It was a slow poison, grasping for every foothold, choking every inch it was allowed. It spread and spread until it claimed its victim, the fall, the sin. Through one man's disobedience, darkness was let into light. The Creator who had dwelt with creation now had to slay creation. The once untainted earth had its first taste of blood. As the Creator looked upon the death that was to be a covering for sins, he knew that the same would have to be done on a bigger scale, but it would take time. Sin took its hold on the earth. So great was its hold that the whole earth was to be cleansed with water. The obedience of one man saved a remnant. The years went by slowly until a man named Abram heard a voice. The obedience of one man set another stone on the road of covenant. But for the promise of a people and a land, once again, the Creator stepped in and shed the blood of creation to ratify that promise. More years went by, and the people of God found themselves enslaved in exile. The Hebrews served the Egyptians under the bitter rule of slavery. But the obedience of one man would again set a stone on the road of covenant. Moses led the Hebrews out of Egypt under the mighty hand of God. Through frogs and lice, hail and locusts, darkness and even death, God faithfully watched over his people. But yet again, to escape the death that passed over, the innocent blood of a lamb had to be shed. The earth groaned. The promise of a people in a land was coming to pass. From Egypt to the wilderness, and now from the wilderness to the land, Moses passed the leadership of God's people to Joshua. But to purge the land that had been promised to Abraham, many wars were fought, and many shed their blood. The earth groaned louder. Slowly the land was purged. Judges came and went. The people rebelled and repented, rebelled and repented, rebelled and repented. The people of God now cried out for a human king. They were no longer satisfied with God as their king, but God in his great mercy chose a man after his own heart. David, a shepherd, a warrior, a worshiper. The only man to earn the title as one after God's own heart, yet still sin crouched at his door. A man as great as he, yet the blood of thousands was on his hands. But the plan of God remained. From David's tree a branch would emerge, having from him the fullness of God's Spirit. From the time of the wilderness to 4 BCE, millions and millions of lambs were slain. Millions of spotless lambs gave their blood as a temporary covering until, behold the Lamb of God, who takes away the sin of the world. Redemption, true redemption was at hand. The Messiah, the Son of Man, the Son of God, the Holy One had come down to put an end to it all. He lived his life with perfect obedience to his Father, perfect oneness. He spent his days living, loving, healing, exposing, guiding, shepherding, obeying, listening, teaching, forgiving, and redeeming. Not a single sin would be found in him, not a single spot or blemish. The garden had returned as a human, yet not entirely human. His very essence was fulfillment. His very existence was fulfillment. His presence caused people to love him or hate him. The will of the Father led him to be led away. The will of the Father led him to be led away as a criminal. The full wrath of God was to be poured out on him. The full weight of every sin for all time. Too much for a man to bear, yet for the joy set before him. The joy of you and I at this table. He let himself be led away as an innocent lamb. The innocent lamb. Through the obedience of one man, light overcame the dark. Through the blood of one man, communion with God was possible again. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the story. I know it's my son Daniel, but I think that I don't know that I've ever heard the story of Passover as succinctly said as is in those words. Our Passover last night was simple, yet it was overwhelming. We had a foot washing, the lamb, the bitter herbs, the story that was told. To see, we started from the oldest to the youngest, and kind of with the foot washing, it was one person at a time, and as it came down to the children, to watch the children washing the feet of other children. Next year, we need to make a note that there needs to be larger boxes of Kleenex. Maybe crying towels would be better said at the Passover. But the story was told of the Messiah. You know, it's tragic how many Passovers I've been to in the past that I know about. I mean, there's been times that I have not led the Passover, and those of you that know me, I wrote a Passover Seder a number of years ago with the help of a good friend of mine in South Carolina. And in there we placed Messiah into it, because Passover without Messiah, to me, is a story about a people that were brought out of a land. And yes, there was miracles, and yes, the story is amazing, but it just tells part of the story. The story doesn't make sense if we just take one chapter out of the book and say that we've read the whole book. Because Passover is about redemption. Passover is about taking us from the garden to the kingdom, and the redemption that must be through the blood of the Lamb. That has to be the focus. That has to be, the blood of the Lamb is the thread that is between the pages of the book and holds the story together. So we went through these things, and then after our Passover, we let some of the kids went and started playing around a little bit, but we started around the table and eventually ended up moving to the living room, because we knew that this night was not gonna, it was gonna last a little while, but it was going to be about something different, and that's something Daniel had instructed us to do, which was tell our story. A time in which in our lives that we had found our own deliverance from Egypt. Once again, mental note, we need to make sure that there's more Kleenex in the room. Large crying towels may be very, very appropriate. But to hear the stories of people that I know well, that I've been around, I've worshiped with them, I've prayed with them, I've harvested grapes with them in Israel, I've been part of their lives, they've been part of mine, some of the closest friends that I have. But things I didn't know about. As we began to be just very open with one another about the things of our life and how the Father has dealt with our own individual redemption. For see, it is not that, what is Passover? Is Passover corporate, or is Passover individual? Judaism, this is not a judgment call at all, it's just a statement. Judaism has focused on corporate redemption. Christianity has focused on individual redemption. Which one is true? Which one is right? And the answer is yes. But my statement would be that our corporate redemption will only be as strong as our individual redemption. And the reason for the failure of Israel in the wilderness, the reason for the failure of the Hebrews in the land of Israel through the centuries has been the weakness of individual redemption. Again, I'm not trying to state anything in judgment. It's just my observation. On the other hand, Christianity's message of individual redemption shows a weakness when we do not turn that into corporate redemption and work together as one. Hopefully balance that out a little bit. So I sat and listened. Having known that this was happening, I had gone through a couple of different scenarios in my own mind. One was an amazing day of prayer when I first met John Faust. Many of you have heard me tell that story. I was standing there in his living room, him and Marie, my wife Kathy, and how the Spirit, the Ruach, just came into the room. The other was a morning service at Mountain View Nazarene Church in Tucson, Arizona, when my world was totally rocked. That was a moment of personal redemption. But as I sat there at Passover last night, it was very apparent to me the story that I was to tell. It was a story that culminated really this month, Passover 2023, will be 20 years ago. I had left a congregation, my church in Spring Creek, Florida, in 1999, and was working with another ministry. Everything was going great, and what I'm about to say, I'm not blaming the person for. But the person we were working with had began to study a lot of the rabbinic sources and had passed those over. Again, I'm not laying blame on any. If I'm going to lay blame, I'm going to lay the blame on the enemy, on Satan. I'm going to lay the blame on myself for allowing myself to be led down a road. But see, the truth is that I needed a road. There was a road that I needed to walk down because there was a shortcut I had taken that I wasn't even aware of. And that shortcut was called the crisis of faith. I've taught on that numerous times through the years. I've taught on it with Life on Purpose, with the guys. The crisis of faith is when we come to the place that the truth of the Almighty becomes ours. We own it. It's not something, I had, even as a pastor, I had gone through my years as in doing some Bible school and teaching and everything, but I was still going off of my grandmother's faith, other people's faith in my life. I had never really come to the place of owning, though I knew Messiah, without a doubt in my mind, I knew Messiah, but there was something missing that I was owning that knowledge totally and completely as mine. And so when books were brought in the house of questioning the deity of Yeshua, books were brought in questioning who he was, I began to read some of that. I began to listen to these things, and it's interesting. Kathy was in those days ordering books as much as anybody was of things refuting this, but yet we were heading down that road. And I would love to tell you today that it was my great study habits. I would love to tell you that it was my great wisdom, my great Bible knowledge that kept me from continuing on that path, but I would not be honest with you if I said that. It was literally divine intervention. It was, yes, the study that my wife was doing, and I'm very grateful for that. But in the end, I had to own it. And it was 20 years ago This time of year, it was Passover. I was leading a Passover. I wasn't supposed to be leading that year, but we had about 60, 70 people coming together. Someone else was supposed to lead. Something happened last minute, literally within the last couple of days, and I was thrust into leading the Passover. But I was in this place in my own life of questioning who Messiah was. I find it fascinating that it's the Father's timing, that it was during Passover. And so it was during that time that I would question, is Yeshua truly the Messiah? Is he God? Was he Messiah, but he's just a man? And all of those things were going on. I would end up going to Israel right after that, and the ministry of Join to Hashem was actually the birthing of Join to Hashem, though the conception would not be until about September of that year. The birthing of Join to Hashem, this ministry, was actually Passover of 2023, right in that time period. And it was in that time that, as I said, it was literally divine intervention. I can take you to the place. I can take you to the exact place I was standing, to the moment when the Father just opened my eyes to who Messiah is. That he couldn't have been a man, just a man. Because if he was just a man and he died upon an execution stake for my sin, then why is that any different than me offering my own life for my sin? What's the difference here? There wasn't any. But it took a heavenly realm to enter into this physical realm for me to be redeemed. The lamb had to be something from outside of this realm for it to be effective in something that it's unexplainable. I mean, trying to come up with the words sometime of explaining redemption, explaining the fall, explaining redemption, all of these things, it's beyond my vocabulary. But I understand that it took the Almighty himself coming in the form of a man and to pay the price for my sin. It was my crisis of faith. And so, as I said, I'm not sitting here today blaming a person. Some of you that are watching, you remember those days. I'm not blaming a person. I'm thankful. At this moment in time, I'm thankful for the road that the Father allowed me to walk down. And I'm very thankful that he put a stop sign and said it's time for you to make a U-turn. It was through some amazing events that happened in that day. I won't go into it all here. But the events would be the birth of this ministry and everything that has happened since. It's scary to me. It was a somber moment, one of the most somber moments of my life last night. Most everyone knows I'm very very much joke oriented, or coming up with some kind of one-liner or something. But last night was not the one-liner. It was an extremely somber moment as I once again came face to face with how close I came to continuing down that road, and how different my life, and I say this hopefully with all humility, other people's lives, how different their lives might have been had Kathy and I continued down that road. So that's my story. And to quote Joseph in Egypt when he looked at his brothers, to kind of twist this one a little bit, what the enemy planned for evil, God brought about for good. And I'm so thankful. And that's why this Passover and being able to tell the corporate story, but also the individual story, was so meaningful to me. But I want to end up with something that I brought up on last week at Life Assembly. And that is something that struck me as we were, I gave an assignment to those of our congregation to read as Yeshua would have come into Jerusalem on the 10th of Nisan. That was last Shabbat. To begin on Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday to read the 4 gospel accounts of the crucifixion, of the arrest, his crucifixion, but to stop short of the events of the resurrection. So just to go to the crucifixion, his death, and stop right there. What struck me this year is it's interesting how every year something different strikes you. And this year it was the same. What struck me was the words of Yochanan, John, when he was standing there at the execution stake. And the scenario, the picture is this: that Yeshua is there upon a stake, a cross. I believe it to be a tree that had the cross beam on it, but that's irrelevant for the story at the moment. He's hanging there upon this stake. To the right of him, to the left of him, are 2 thieves. One is blaspheming him. The other one is asking for redemption. In the crowd, standing before him, is the religious leaders, is the politicians of the day, and is just a few people. John, Yochanan, his mother, Mary, it says his sister Mary, and Mary Magdalene. In the distance, some scriptures translated, a safe distance away is Peter, Kepha, who is standing just close enough that when he denies him for the 3rd time, and that crier, it was the crier on the wall. It wasn't a rooster. It was a crier on a wall. When he denies him for the 3rd time, Peter is close enough that his eyes and Yeshua's eyes lock on each other. Of course, Judas has hanged himself. Where's the other disciples? Where are they? There's 9 more? Where are these men? Where are these men that had given up everything? They had given over their lives. We will follow you anywhere. Where are they? Nowhere to be found. Where's the blind man that can now see? Where's the lame man? The man who was sitting there at the pool of Siloam that picked up his mat and could now walk. Where is he? Where's the centurion with his son? Where's the woman with the issue of blood? Where's Peter's mother-in-law? Where are the 5,000 that were fed with a few loaves and some fish? Where's the demon-possessed man who was in the tombs in the area of the Gadarenes? Where are these people? They're nowhere to be found. It is only John and 3 women who are standing there with Yeshua in the midst of religion and politics of that day. The crowds are siding with the politics and religion that placed him upon an execution stake. And this asks a question. Where are we? Where are we today? This is an individual question that each of us should be asking ourselves. Are we in the midst of Passover, going along with religion? I don't think I need to explain myself there, but for the world, religion will be Good Friday and Easter Sunday, which is not in this book, folks. There's nowhere in this book that you can find Good Friday and Easter Sunday. Are we going along for the sake of peace with somebody? Maybe it's there's that revelation has not been yours, but if you're listening and that revelation is not, it may be the year for you to start questioning these things. Or are we standing out there with the political group, which is, in my opinion, just as bad? I'm not looking, I've said this so many times, I'm not looking for politics or a politician to bring the kingdom. I'm not looking for some man to come up on the stage and say, I've got the answers. No, I know who that is. So I'm not looking for a political solution to a spiritual problem. Are we following just as at a safe distance? So that, well, I want to be close to him, but I don't want to be so close that I get in trouble, and maybe I'm going to be the next one on an execution stick, and I'm not ready to go there. I'm not ready to die to myself. And in the end, we become the one who is denying him. Are we so involved in our own finances? Judas was in charge of the treasury. Are we so involved in our own support, our own financial stability, that we end up betraying him? Or have we just become irrelevant as far as what he has done in our lives? These are questions that each of us need to ask ourselves in this Passover. And final question is this: looking back at Passover, was it full of joy? Was it full of Messiah? Was there any life in it? For maybe the words of, in the book of Numbers, I believe, there was a people that came to Moses and said, we were in contact with a dead body and we could not celebrate Passover, so is there any option for us? And Moshe goes and he confronts the Almighty and he says to Moses, tell these people they can do it 30 days later. Maybe we should ask ourselves, if there was no life in our Passover, maybe it was so elaborate that there was no meaning. I'm not judging anything. I'm just asking some questions, folks. Was there life there? Because if there wasn't life there, maybe it's time to begin to plan for 30 days later to go through a Passover again, but this time make the determination that I'm going to tell the whole story and not just a chapter of the book. There will be life because there will be the message of Messiah. Just my thoughts today. So for those of you that are close to Wilkesburg, I hope to see you there. It's going to be a great time. Always enjoy working with Exodus Road Band and with Rico. So Chag Sameach, happy festival or blessed festival season. Shavua Tov, have a blessed, prosperous week. Shabbat Shalom. Okay, I got all those things out of the way. I think so. So with that, Bezrat Hashem, God willing, see you again next week. And until then, be strong in the knowledge that he was not only placed in a tomb, but he was resurrected from one. See you next week.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yaseh Hashem lecha. Shalom.